Good day, everyone. Welcome to The Real Truth. I'm Tommy Spina. I'm going back to season 2. I want to welcome our two guests, Vince Schilleci, owner-operator of Cali, the only dispensary that I've been able to locate that has a website and a storefront and almost an opening. Welcome to the show, Vince.
Thanks, Tommy.
And with him, to help us put things in a perspective, I've got two lawyers, Whitt Steineker with Bradley Firm. Of course, Vince is with Maynard, which is a very unusual marriage of podcastees. Welcome to the show, Whitt.
It's good to be back, Tommy. Thank you.
Today is May 13th, and we are almost there. Vince, I have spoken to you and received information from you that indicates you are ready to rock and roll in the city of Montgomery and probably in the city of Bessemer, but not quite as ready as you are in the city of Montgomery. Is that an accurate statement?
Close. We are, our Montgomery facility is completed. We've got our certificate of occupancy. We've got a business license. We've been checked off by a commission. We have a staff. So as soon as we get product, we're ready to go. And, and we started construction in Talladega as well, and working on Bessemer as well.
And Whitt, could you share with us where we are with Judge Harwood in the integrated universe of licensing, which I believe has been delayed once again? In typical lawyer fashion, nothing ever happens when it's supposed to.
Yeah, when we last talked, it was set to go for the investigative hearing to happen sort of last week of March, first couple weeks of April. The week before, that was delayed for a variety of reasons, and including an ongoing appeal by one of the parties about trade secret. And the currently, it looks like it's scheduled to start the last week of July and the first 2 weeks of August, but we don't have firm dates for when each applicant is supposed to do its presentation. So even that is subject to change. But as of right now, it's scheduled to start, I believe it's July 27th.
Are you going to be present for those presentations?
Lord willing.
Vince, what seems to be the hang up at this point? And what has happened? What has happened since we last talked?
Well, I guess since we last talked, we've got our construction complete on at least one of our dispensaries. I don't know that there's a hang up at this point, Tommy. There are, this isn't a product that has a life cycle like a normal consumer good where you make it, you ship it, you sell it. There's a lot of testing that this product goes through. When the cultivators harvest, they send it to the processor. The processor does its magic and pulls out the oil, and then the oil is sent down to the lab, tested. Once that test comes back, the oil is then processed into the final goods, whether it be the cuboids or the caplets or whatever it may be, and then they have to be tested again. And so, not only that, you have all of these different computer systems talking to each other. So you have the seed to sale tracking system that's talking to the state registry. And so there are a lot of different moving parts that are coming together now. But, the main thing, I think the important thing for the industry is that we don't have a situation like other states where they rushed the rollout and in the first week had to, recall 70% of the product because there was something wrong with the testing. And so I know, Lord knows, everyone has been patient for the past 5 years, but I can confidently say we're days away from product being on the shelf.
Do you, I mean, I have this visual in my mind where like there's this giant rush and there's a long line out the door, almost like people getting to the ABC store and camping out for Pappy Van Winkle.
Yeah.
Do you foresee that being happening? I mean, do we know how many people have actually gotten certified from the doctors? I know we have 31 doctors.
Yeah, I don't have an exact number. It's in the hundreds, I believe. And part of that is just, basing that on what the people who have signed up at our website to get more information. There could, obviously we want to have things as smooth and possible, as smooth as possible. We want, our patients to have a good experience. I imagine there will be a lot of folks in that first week that come by. Our goal, if we can, if we do it right, is to get patients in and out as quickly as possible. And we're trying to set that up. We're working to send out some messaging to our patients. Number one, one of the tough parts being the only dispensary in the state is it's not just folks from the Montgomery area and the surrounding area that will be coming to our store. We'll have folks from Huntsville, from Tuscaloosa, from Baldwin County. And I know that because I've talked to these patients on the phone about this. And so, we're going to try and make things as orderly as possible. And let people know that, we're here, we have the products and we're going to serve them. So yes, I imagine there will be a line. I don't know that it will be something that you would see, in a larger, a medical market that somehow turns into a rec market like you've seen like in Missouri or something like that, where there are lines out the door. I don't know if that's going to happen. If it does, we'll be ready. But, I do believe through some patient conversations that we can, if we do our job on the front end, hopefully we'll keep things as orderly as possible.
Did that happen in Missouri?
I think when you see, and Whit, you may can speak to this, when you see any type of market that goes, rec, you're going to see long lines. Sometimes it's just because people want to see what's going on.
What I meant was, did the medical morph into recreational?
I think yes, in that state it will. That's not something. Tommy, like we talked about the first time we spoke, that's not something that's on our radar. We're a healthcare program, and so that our focus is on making sure that patients have a good experience here. So that's. I don't think that's on anybody's radar to even think about. We want to make sure our patients get medicine. That's the key.
You have a blog out there. What's the name of it?
thebuddingtrendsblog.com.
And if people go there, what do they see? You writing about?
They do. Me and several other members of our firm are writing about, for example, the last 13 business days, we've done 13 different blog posts about the various implications of the federal rescheduling of medical marijuana. And we try to write in sort of plain English that people can, digest pretty easily. It's not, we try not to use a lot of Latin. We try to use some pop culture and some music lyrics and things like that. So it's a little bit of a way for us to keep up on stuff and, stay sharp, but also have a little fun.
I don't know that you would know this at the dispensary level, but do you have a person on staff, Vince, that would be able to talk to a consumer, say that consumer is me, and I go in and I say, look, I've been dealing with depression most of my life, but as I've aged, I've also developed pains to the point where I've had to have my hips replaced. My knees are not right. Is there someone there I can talk to who can say, well, those are two different universes? Do we address, are you able to have someone there who can address those specific needs of that particular patient? Because I think both of those are qualifying conditions under the statute. And
they are qualifying conditions, but Tommy, I think it's important to remember we can't give healthcare advice, and so those conversations really need to be had with the physician who will give those recommendations. We can explain, perhaps what the onset time is on products, and the different ways it can, the different products available, but we really can't get into, you need to take this for this qualified condition. That's healthcare. That's healthcare advice. And in our conversations with the physicians, we feel confident that they're going to really do a good job of explaining to their patients up front. Here's the qualified conditions, and here's what why I'm recommending this. Our job is more of, here's what your recommendation is. Here are the products that can help. If we see that, and a lot of this, of course, should be done at the physician's end as well. But if we see, that you're on a medication or something like that, if we know of any type of effect it could have on when taking medical cannabis, we can point those things out. But what we can't do, we can't give healthcare advice. That's going to be the physicians.
And Whit can probably speak to this after I say what I'm about to say, which is, in talking with the doctor cannot write a script for what is now a Schedule 1 I'll call it drug, for lack of a better.
I'm not sure. Tommy, real quick. One of the major things that's been different, that's changed since you and I talked, and even since you and Whit have talked, medical cannabis has been rescheduled. It is now a Schedule 3 narcotic.
Well, I did not know that change had actually gone into effect. So
in the past 2 weeks, Whit, is that right?
April 26th.
That's correct.
So, Whit, how does that affect what the doctor who's giving the card to the patient can write down? Can he now write a script for a specific combination of CBD, THC, and see if they can match that in the store as close as possible? The ratios of those two byproducts of the hemp plant, so that the patient can get the right treatment for the right ailment.
So I think it's a little bit unknown as we wait for DEA, FDA, various agencies to issue guidance in reaction to the Department of Justice's rescheduling of medical marijuana. And I want to stress, just for anyone listening, the rescheduling to Schedule 3 is for FDA-approved products that contain marijuana and for state-licensed medical marijuana programs, which would include Callies and other dispensaries that were licensed by the state of Alabama. And we actually wrote a blog post on this and this will be close to your heart, the First Amendment implications of rescheduling and what it would mean to tell a doctor that they could not offer advice on what type of products available at a dispensary might be best for their patient given their condition. So I think you'll certainly see a a loosening on what physicians are allowed to say. I think it may take some time for that to flow through to where physicians, get the message here, especially, people who are in physician groups or hospitals, for that to flow through all the bureaucracy and administration that comes along with that. But ultimately, I think you'll see much more free back and forth between doctors and patients about this. I don't know that it takes the form of a prescription. It certainly doesn't have to in order to comply with Alabama law, which would make it comply with federal law. And so I do think there'll be an opening up of that relationship that previously was a little bit of almost like a game of battleship in terms of what the doctor could or would say, and versus what the patient then would have to go to the dispensary and say. So in that sense, I think it's been a very positive development for patients.
In my world of being a criminal defense lawyer, you've just raised some issues in my brain that I haven't thought about arguing before, but I guess I will be now. Although, quite frankly, you don't see a lot of marijuana cases in this area. If you're going to see them, they're going to be large scale, and they're going to be outside of the purview of medical cannabis. They're going to be people doing things like the Wild Wild West back in the days before there was medical and or recreational marijuana being charged. But the rescheduling would have to impact the criminal code in some fashion. I haven't looked at it, especially in the federal system, I would think, where there are sentencing guidelines that in drug cases are directly related to the type of drug and the quantity of drug.
I think from a practical matter, it would be, from a sentencing perspective, you would look at marijuana the way you look at ketamine, as opposed to when it was Schedule I, the way you would look at LSD.
Well,
but then that also depend, I believe, on what state you're in and what program you're in, because one of the interesting things that Schedule III does is it bifurcates cannabis into medical cannabis under a state program, which is Schedule III, but recreational cannabis is still Schedule I. So you could be in a state that has both a medical and recreational program, and depending on how you purchase it, one would be a Schedule I and one would be a Schedule III. It's a really interesting point. I mean, that's going to be something, particularly in the states with a recreational program, they're going to have to battle.
That's Whitt talking, right?
That's actually Vince talking.
Oh, okay. I thought so. But he was crawling in. We're doing this by phone, so we're not in the same room. We're actually in 3 different places. So I hope it works. If it doesn't, we'll do it again. So that is, and how does that affect how law enforcement would react to someone who might be carrying some cannabis? I mean, you've opened up the door for a whole new level of defense. Well, yes, I do have some cannabis, but it's medical. Oh, yes, I do have some cannabis, but I didn't get it. I got it at a dispensary. So if I got it from a dispensary, it's Schedule III. If I got it from my next door neighbor, it's Schedule I, and he grew it. Is that what I just heard Vince say?
This is Whit, but I would say that's certainly my interpretation. I mean, I think the practical reality is there's 2 things. One, in your case, someone who says, "Oh, I got it from a dispensary." I mean, there will be records of the transaction if that were in fact the case. And now the ability to make that determination, on the side of the road in the middle of the night, that may not be immediately sort of feasible, but
no, you're going to jail. You are going to jail. This argument will take place in a courtroom. It's the same with DUI. You could not be drinking, but if you refuse to take that test, you're going to jail. If you take that test and you blow zeros, you're blowing them from jail. So you're already arrested. So you're still going to have to go through the court system, because right there on the side of the street, where the interaction is occurring between law enforcement and the putative defendant, is not going to be resolved at that point.
You know, that's an interesting. So I think number one, you had this event. Part of what we're doing at a dispensary is, explaining to our patients, here's what the law says about, if you travel with this medicine. First and foremost, it's got to stay in its package that has the actual,
proper
recommendation on there that shows, this was purchased at this dispensary on this date. So you have those labels in there. But of course, if, I don't, and Whit, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think if you're driving under the influence, it doesn't matter where you get that from, correct? I mean, it'd be the same as if you were driving under the influence of another Schedule III narcotic. I think there's two things. If you're on the side of the road and you happen to be driving home with your product, if you show them, here's the labels that were printed off the dispensary, see, I bought it here, here's my recommendation, I don't think you're going to get arrested. If you're using it outside of what the recommendations are and in a way that's illegal, I'm not sure it matters where you got it from at that point.
Well,
and that's part of our job as a dispensary, is to explain and educate our patients those different rules.
And we always have the overarching police officer's discretion, which is really in control in that dynamic, from the way I see it. Would the rescheduling have other implications besides those that we've just spoken about? I need to have Judge Fortune as a guest, who handles all the drug cases that come through Jefferson County, and wonder what adaptations they are making for this issue as we move forward. You got a person. The whole point of, quote, drug court was to shift the focus, especially as it relates to cannabis now, but any other drug, was to shift the focus away from criminality and into more of a public health forum. And let's treat the underlying issue so that we can modify behavior. That's a better way to say it. It opens up a lot of it's just going to keep us working. I feel like we have job security. 3 lawyers talking, and I think it will probably constantly be evolving to adapt. As well as I do, there are going to be problems, and certain police departments are going to react differently to an individual who is in possession. Also, how do you prove they're under the influence? You can't prove it with a breath test. I think they're working on things like that. And then how do you prove when it was consumed? I could consume cannabis 3 weeks ago, still have it in my blood, but not be impaired. And I think that's going on in Denver. Is that on your blog, Whit? Any talk about that? I've had cases involving that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we've addressed that. It's some of that comes back to sort of the type of evidence, like the ability of a police officer to determine whether the scent of marijuana is one that is sort of freshly smoked, or maybe there even is smoke, coming out of the vehicle, versus sort of a stale odor. And I mean, boy, you can just imagine, how people's pupils look, things like that, how they respond to questions. And I mean, you know way more than either me or Invets combined about what that testimony from law enforcement looks like and how compelling it is versus, a defendant that, is basically says, no, that's not true. And so that'll lead to some pretty difficult policing until we can get more conclusive scientific evidence of impairment, contemporaneous impairment.
Yeah, no. And, what rises to the level of probable cause to conduct a blood draw, how the implied consent statutes that, for those that don't know what those words mean, there's a statute that says if you are operating a vehicle on a public highway, you impliedly consent to take a breath and blood draw, breath test and a blood draw, even if you're unconscious or dead. And now I am currently dealing with that issue. How do you consent to something or be considered to have consented to something if you're unconscious or if you're dead? That troubles me constitutionally, and it rubs up against the Fourth Amendment. For those that don't know, that's the one that protects you from unreasonable search and seizure. And I would also like to know if in your blog, have there been some devices developed with respect to marijuana that can measure I think it's measured in nanograms, in terms of what amount of marijuana in an average sized person equates to impairment or the presumption of impairment. It would certainly be a rebuttable presumption. That's what 0.08 in the world of alcohol creates. It creates a rebuttable presumption that you're under the influence to the extent that you shouldn't be operating a vehicle. Is there testing devices? I think there are testing devices that have been developed that do quantify the level of, I'm going to say marijuana in your system at the time that either by breath or blood indicates, and whether that equates to impairment. Because after all, it's not illegal to drink and drive. Although I advise people to have zero tolerance and you'll stay out of my office and save a lot of money, because whether you blow those zeros or something under the threshold, you're still that determination is being made. You're already arrested, and you're already in jail. But where do we pin the tail on the donkey when it comes to a substance like cannabis? Because not everybody reacts the same. And there's also the timeline of the consumption versus the testing. It opens up a lot of questions, more questions than answers, I would say.
Tommy, one thing.
Go ahead, Vince.
No, with you go.
No, I was just going to say, I'm optimistic that there will be some development in the future that allows us to have something that equates to the sort of 0.08 alcohol standard. The science is developing to get us there. I'm not aware of any place that actually has any sort of set number, but I think we'll ultimately get there. That's where we are as of right now. I'm sorry to interrupt, Vince.
No, one thing I was going to say, I understand the reschedule kind of brings up these interesting, legal issues. But the other thing it does is the first time the federal government is saying there is a medical use for cannabis. And I think that more than anything is just a huge step forward for medical industry, for the medical cannabis industry. It's no longer, we're saying, yes, not only is there a medical use, we're opening up the door for more research now to figure out how all these terpenes and all these different cannabinoids, I always said that wrong, as we always not the last time.
Cannabinoids.
Cannabinoids, thank you, can provide some great relief. And I feel like that's, for me, that's the big takeaway of where this will take this industry, is we are now able to legally do the research to carry this forward and provide some great alternatives for patients, because the patients I'm talking to, they want it. They're tired of the side effects that the other, the classic pain medications they've taken for years, and they want this alternative. And they've read, I talked to a gentleman from Tuscaloosa just yesterday, stage 3 pancreatic cancer. And, he's telling me about all of these different kind of support pages, and how, the people in the other cancer patients in these support groups are telling them, or they're talking about, well, we're in this medical cannabis state, and we can take this and we can take that, and here's where it relieves us. We don't have the, we're not losing hair, we're not having liver issues, we're not having these adverse side effects. So I think that is really exciting, and of course you get 3 lawyers in a room. We're going to talk about all the legal issues, but taking my lawyer hat off and putting my industry hat on, I think that in and of itself is what makes that reschedule so important and just a huge step forward.
Whit?
I completely agree. I mean, it's the most important thing that's happened in the cannabis, be it marijuana or hemp industry, and since 1970, when it was scheduled, when the Controlled Substances Act came out and it was put in Schedule 1. It's a remarkable and historic recognition of the therapeutic benefits of marijuana, and it's going. So, in addition to offering sort of the imprimatur of the government and legitimacy that comes along with that, it's going to make it much easier for these, again, medical marijuana operators who are licensed through the state and regulated. It's going to take their day-to-day operations from being extraordinarily difficult and burdensome to just pretty difficult and burdensome. But it'll still be, a privilege to operate in that space and to provide services to the patients that has to be, worked at diligently and every day, and it's pretty much zero tolerance for any type of not following rules, but it does open opportunities for capital, and investments become more available, and access to cash, the types of things that you would want to have a growing industry have, and one that is cash intensive, you'd want to have them, available so that they don't have to cut corners. I think that's a good for the operators, but it's also a good for the patients.
Have we overcome, you spoke of cash, are we still dealing in a cash-only business?
Yes.
And what do you do with the cash? Every time you go to the bank, you're going to trigger a suspicious activity report.
So then
you make a deposit in excess or even close to $10,000.
Vince, why don't you do it from the practical perspective?
Sure. So from the practical perspective, yes, we still, we're fortunate to have a good banking partner that knew these issues coming into it. Just to be frank, we pay more than what a normal, banking customer would pay because the bank has to deal with that. At the same time, with 40 states playing in this, that are in this medical cannabis market, they see the shift. There are best practices that banks are, adopting that are in this space. And yes, the compliance fee is higher on our part, but, we think with time and particularly with the reschedule, things may loosen up a little bit. But yes, you're 100% correct. It's still a cash business. There are options that you can, that are, they are debit or credit like, using apps where you can, tie to your bank account and make an ACH transfer to purchase the product, and that is a very easy and kind of a tested and good way of doing that. We have that option.
You can do that in the store?
In the store. So, there's, of course, there's an app you have to go through and you get your bank account. I think it's what's it called? Plaid. Is that the little, if you set up oftentimes if you're setting up your account with someone, you'll have to set it up to a company called Plaid, which just confirms this is the bank account. We're going to have some, but you'll be able to tie your bank account and almost treat it like a Venmo. For lack of better terms.
Yeah.
There are other, cashless ATM, PIN debit opportunities where, again, as long as you have a debit card, and you have a PIN that it can, purchase that way. And then, of course, cash is the other way. And we're working with a great partner, a great company that helps us transport the cash. And, we have, a state-of-the-art, vault and everything that protects it. So yes, there are compliance costs, but it's just a part of being in this industry. And in a way, those compliance costs kind of they keep us following these different things. We have to stay, I hate to say stay perfect, but that's what we're tasked to do being in this industry. And it's not like we came into this industry thinking it was going to be any other way. We're willing to take on that challenge.
Are we still going to be consumer affordable? And I know that's relative, but
I feel confident we will. Yes. I feel confident we will. In our application, I think you will see that the prices are coming in less than what we predicted. And that includes, the taxes. One piece that Alabama and a few other states deal with that other more mature states don't is that we have a tax on this, subject to both sales tax and cannabis tax. And so, but, I know at least the industry partners I've been working with, we're doing all we can to make sure we're efficient and we have a product that's affordable.
Can't be any worse than the grocery store these days. Holy mackerel. I can't even believe. I like to shop. I come from a grocery family. Vince knows Italians were either fixing shoes or selling groceries back in the old
days. My great-granddad did. My great-grandfather was a shoe cobbler.
Yeah. But, what you get and what the total price of your tab at the checkout line, it doesn't seem to be what it used to be even 6 or 8 months ago. Just fascinating to me, fascinatingly scary to me, and frightening for those that can't keep up. It's sad, as a matter of fact. Whit, one last question for you is, did I hear you say something other than cannabis was rescheduled?
Well, it's technically two categories of marijuana that were rescheduled. One is medical marijuana that's in compliance with the state licensing program. So essentially what Vince and the guys at Cali's are going to be doing. So that's one bucket. The other bucket are currently FDA approved drugs that have already been approved that contain marijuana. And I think there's two of them. One of them was Epidiolex, which we talked about. But so if you have already received FDA approval and for a product that contains marijuana, that product is now, or that substance is now in Schedule 3.
And prior to that happening on April 26th, it would have been in Schedule 1 or 2?
I think 1. But yeah. I mean, which sort of demonstrated the absurdity of having marijuana as a substance that by definition had no recognized medical benefits except that it had been approved by the FDA for, medicine.
Ketamine has bad PR, and it has been shown that it is useful and effective in treating depression, certain other ailments, to the point where there are ketamine wellness clinics open, I think even in Birmingham, although there's a variety of ketamine that's being used. I think it's called sketamine, if I'm not mistaken. But has ketamine always been Schedule 3?
As long as I've been aware of it, which admittedly is, probably the last 10 years.
Well, people really take, because they equate it with animal tranquilizer. Bad. But apparently there is some medicinal benefits that it provides for people that are, especially depression, that are effective and successful long-term for those people that have been dealing with depression on a daily basis and having to medicate on a daily basis to cope with that medical condition. I'm just curious about that. That has nothing to do with what we're here to talk about today. So as we wrap, I see that we should be open within the next 2 or 3 weeks at the most in Montgomery, Alabama, with one dispensary in the state of Alabama that will sort of be like Morgan Whalen appearing at the University of Alabama's stadium. How somebody draws 104,000 people night after night is fascinating to me. I suspect Cali's will be drawing a good number of people if it's the only place people can go where there's a dispensary open. And I wish you the best, Vince, with getting those other storefronts open as well.
I really appreciate that.
Anything, Whit, you would like to add to this conversation going forward in terms of problems you foresee or hurdles that we have overcome as a consequence of the Cannabis Commission's very difficult task. What are we at, 5 years now or 6 since our legislation? Approaching 6, I think.
It's 5 years this month.
Oh.
Yeah, just over 5 years, yeah.
Wow. It'd be nice to see some revenue, wouldn't it? In my accounting system, is paid in, took out, left over. I would think the leftover is a negative number, and the paid in is a ginormous number for you. Is that fair enough to say?
We're looking forward to serving our patients. So, Tommy, if that first sale will make it all worth it, honestly, because I do think you're going to see patients. It really affects them in a good way. So, when we get that first sale, it's going to be worth the time. It's going to be worth the wait.
Well, I appreciate both of you. Vince Schilleci with Maynard, one of the well-respected firms in Birmingham, maybe the oldest, I don't know, and Bradley, equally as respected and equally as old. You guys...
Older.
You're older?
Actually, I'm not, yeah.
I bet you're in triple digits by now. If I'm at...
We're 156.
Oh, if I'm at almost a half a century, myself personally, you guys, 156, so the country's bordering on a 250-year birthday. I think all of that says we're just all getting old. So,
Absolutely.
Thank you again for being with me. I hope this came out okay for the listeners. Thank you for your time today. This has been The Real Truth. We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining me today on The Real Truth. My name is Tommy Spina. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. I hope you will follow or subscribe to my podcast and listen in to the next episode. If you found it valuable, please take a moment to rate it and review it. It helps us to reach more listeners that care about the issues that matter. Share it with a friend. Stay engaged and remember, the truth matters. I'll see you next time.